In 1957, in the quiet neighborhood of Fox Chase, Philadelphia, nestled among the trees and homes, lies the backdrop to one of the most chilling crime scenes in American history. The lifeless of a young boy, abandoned and alone, was discovered. Welcome to Murder and Me, where we journey into the depths of mystery and intrigue. I'm your host, Jorge Magrin, and in today's episode, we unravel the haunting tale of the boy in the box. Join me as we delve into the shadows of the past, seeking answers to a puzzle that remained unsolved for decades. For the past 65 years, the case remained shrouded in darkness, with no evidence to shed light into the identity of the boy. Yet, as of 2022, advances in DNA technology have shattered the silence, providing a name for the boy who once seemed lost to anonymity. Frederick J. Benonis, a junior at LaSalle College and an experienced hunter familiar with the intricacies of the forest, set out on a cold day in February 1957 with the intent to check his rabbit traps in the wooded area near the Susquehanna Road in Fox Chase, Philadelphia. Reports indicated he was a peeping Tom and was en route to spy on the wayward girls of a Catholic residence nearby Good Shepherd home. As he made his way through the dense underbrush, his attention was drawn not to the usual curry of rabbits, but to an unexpected sight. A discarded bassinet box nestled amidst the trees. Intrigued, he approached the box, unaware of the grim discovery that awaited him within. Peering inside, he was met with the lifeless face of a boy, which at first he mistook for that of a doll. Benonis ignored it at first and returned home. The next morning on his way to school, he heard a report about a missing girl from Belmore, New Jersey, and realized that maybe it wasn't a doll after all. Could her body be what he had seen in that box? When Benonis got to LaSalle, he didn't go to class. Instead, he talked with two faculty counselors and also with his priest brother. All advised him to tell the police his story. At 10 a.m., he called the Philadelphia Homicide Squad, commanded by Captain David Roberts. The neighborhood of Fox Chase, typically serene and peaceful, was suddenly thrust into the spotlight as investigators swarmed the scene, grappling with the grim reality of a child's life tragically cut short. The officers found the cardboard box marked "Fragile, handled with care." In it was the boy's body, around 4 to 6 years old, wrapped in one piece of a cheap, well-worn blanket with a faded design of diamonds and blocks in green, rust red, brown, and white. In the box was another piece of the same blanket, smeared with what appeared to be grease. A third piece, to complete the 64 by 76-inch blanket, was missing. The boy was completely naked, and his head showed signs of bruising, the kind that ended his young life. Despite all that, his body was bone dry and clean. His nails were neatly trimmed, like someone had just given him a fresh manicure. But the palm of his right hand and the soles of his feet were all rough and wrinkled, like he had been soaking in water. They called it the washerwoman effect. His hair was this medium brown color, but it looked like it had been cut off pretty roughly. No sideburns, just a short half-inch mess on top. And on his body, police discovered a spattering of his hair, meaning that the cutting had been made with no sheet around his neck or when the boy was naked, and possibly dead. No man could fix the time of death. The boy could have died 2 days or 2 weeks earlier. Because of how old he was and the condition of his body, it was hard to determine. The location, near a busy highway and close to the border of Philadelphia, made the discovery all the more unsettling. The police had only 3 pieces of direct evidence: a box, a blanket, and a body. However, in the early hours of their investigation, the detectives had no idea that this would be a crime without solution. The left hand had immaculate fingerprints. The washerwoman wrinkles were not severe enough to obscure the impressions on the right hand or foot. Scars on the child's body, including the left ankle, chest, and crotch, could have been surgical incision. There was an L-shaped scar on the chin, a quarter of an inch long in each direction. There were 3 small moles on the left side of the face, a tiny one beneath the right ear, and 3 on the chest. The investigation into the boy in the box took a meticulous turn as detectives chased down every lead, with no matter how faint, in their quest for answers. The evidence seemed promising at first glance. A box bearing the name of the store it came from, a manufacturer's serial number, and a stained blanket that could potentially yield crucial clues. Prosecutors salivated at the thought of such circumstantial evidence, envisioning a clear path to justice. Yet, despite the tantalizing breadcrumbs left behind, the trail grew cold, frustrating even the most seasoned investigators. Hope flickered once more when a distinctive cap was discovered near the box, its Ivy League styled and unique markings suggesting a connection to the perpetrator. With the cap in hand, detectives embarked on a painstaking journey, canvassing over 100 stores and businesses in search of any recollection of the cap or the boy may have belonged to. Mrs. Hannah Robbins, the owner of a South Philadelphia shop where the cap had been made, offered a glimmer of hope with her recollection of a mysterious customer. A man in his late 20s to early 30s, dressed in working clothes, had purchased the cap, requesting the addition of a leather strap and buckle. Despite her clear memory of the transaction, Mrs. Robbins could offer no further details, leaving the detective to comb through a sea of faces in search of a match. Meanwhile, the fingerprints recovered from the scene produced no matches in any police or medical databases, leaving the detectives grasping at straws in their pursuit of the truth. Even a widespread appeal to the medical community yielded no fruitful leads, as doctors across Philadelphia failed to recognize the boy from the circulated descriptions. As the investigation hit one obstacle after another, the investigators grew more frustrated, but they didn't give up. They searched everywhere, from important offices to the busy streets of Philadelphia, determined to find answers for the boy in the box, whose life ended too soon. Despite their efforts, one thing was certain. The boy's identity remained unknown, leaving his story as one of Philadelphia's most puzzling unsolved mysteries. The mystery of the cardboard box became even more puzzling as detectives investigated its origins, hoping to find a crucial clue that could solve the case. The box had the name of the J.C. Penney store in suburban Upper Darby printed on it, a notable 15 miles away from where the boy's body was found. Store officials confirmed that the box was used for a $7.95 white bassinet, providing insight into why it was originally used. However, because J.C. Penney mainly used cash for transactions, it made it hard to track down who bought the bassinet. Even though many similar bassinets were sold from the same delivery, the store didn't keep records of who bought them. This meant detectives had to shift their focus to what happened to the box next. They got help from newspapers and soon received calls from 8 people who either threw the box away with their trash or kept it at home. But when detectives talked to the trash collectors, they hit a dead end, because the collectors had already gotten rid of the trash. The 4 people who bought the white bassinets were still unknown, making the investigation even more complicated. However, Homicide Captain Roberts and Chief Inspector of Detectives John Kelly didn't give up hope. They believed the box held valuable clues, so they carefully examined every aspect, even how it looked when they found it. Surprisingly, the box was dry and didn't have any rain marks, which made them wonder how long it had been outside. This discovery gave them hope, especially when they realized it had rained 3 days before they started investigating. However, just like many other parts of this confusing case, they faced another frustrating problem. There wasn't a Weather Bureau station close to where they found the body, so they couldn't figure out exactly how much it had rained in Fox Chase that day. Even though this was a setback, one thing was for certain. The box had been there since 1:30 in the afternoon on Sunday, the 24th, a whole day before student Benonis found it. The investigation continued to be complex, with every clue giving little hope before becoming uncertain again. Despite feeling unsure and frustrated, the detectives were determined to find justice for the boy in the box. They were committed to uncovering the truth hidden beneath the layers of lies and mystery. As the investigation unfolded, a significant discovery emerged, although it took some time. Around 2 weeks after Benonis found the box, a detective assigned by Chief Kelly went door to door in the neighborhood. During this process, he met 18-year-old John Porasnik, a local teenager whose family had immigrated from Poland in 1949. John, a high school junior, informed the detectives that he had placed around 19 traps in the area as the trapping season was ending. On the Sunday of the 24th, John was on his way to play basketball at the nearby church gym when he spotted something unusual: the box lying in the field. Curiosity got the best of John, so he went closer and opened it, only to find a disturbing sight: a baby's lifeless body wrapped in a blanket. He was shocked and disturbed, so he dropped the box and ran home. But here's the surprising part: he never told anyone about it. Why? It seems that people from behind the Iron Curtain, like John's family, are often cautious about dealing with the police. This bombshell added a whole new layer to the investigation. John's hesitance to speak up, mixed with cultural apprehensions, complicated things. But his story gave the detectives a crucial timeline and insight into how long the box had been there. Yet, despite this breakthrough, the mystery of the boy in the box remained as puzzling as ever, a reminder of just how elusive the truth can be, even in the face of a determined investigation. John's silence was also influenced by a troubling family history. Just a few months earlier, his brother had come across the tragic scene of a suicide victim hanging from a tree in another remote field in Fox Chase. The mere involvement of the authorities had deeply affected John's family, making them hesitant to not get involved with the police once again. John's revelation about the box provided important information about the case, the time when the boy died. Knowing that the boy had been in the box for at least 48 hours before it was found raised troubling questions. Was it possible that the box had been left undisturbed for a week or even longer? This unsettling possibility remained deepening the mystery surrounding the boy's identity and how he died. As the investigation went deeper, different theories emerged. Was it a kidnapping? It seemed possible, but then why hadn't the boy's parents reported him missing? The shadow of a well-known missing child case loomed over the investigation. Mrs. Marilyn Damon's heartbreaking story of her toddler son, Stephen, disappearing from Long Island had captured the nation's attention. Many wonder if the unidentified boy could be Stephen. However, when Nassau County Detective Inspector James Farrell examined the body, he quickly dismissed the idea, pointing out significant differences in facial features, color, and build. Another lead didn't pan out, leaving investigators searching for solid ground in a sea of uncertainty. Now things get more interesting. Dr. Krugman suggested that the condition of the boy hinted at a life of constant movement, a family always on the go, perhaps chasing seasonal work. But then another possibility arose. Could kidnappers be involved? Maybe they took the boy and kept him moving, always staying one step ahead of the police. But then the question also arose. Would kidnappers bother to keep the boy's nails neatly trimmed? It didn't seem likely, did it? So the detectives turned back to Dr. Krugman, hoping for more clues. They asked about the boy's background, and Dr. Krugman's insight were intriguing. He described the boy's features, his long, narrowed head, high face, and nose, as resembling to those of northwestern European descent, possibly from Scandinavia, Germany, or even the UK. However, he cautioned that such traits had become quite common across Europe after World War II. Next, they considered if the boy could have been a Hungarian refugee, given the events of 1956. Initially, it seemed like a promising lead, but further investigation uncovered a crucial detail. All Hungarian refugees admitted to the country had been vaccinated. However, the boy's body showed no signs of vaccination at all. Another dead end in this baffling case. The haircut and the wrinkled skin on the right palm and soles of the feet presented another mystery. That type of wrinkling typically occurs from being immersed in water. Perhaps just before his death, the boy had been playing in the bath. But if that were the case, wouldn't both hands be affected? And if he had been bathing, why hadn't the water washed away the strands of hair the police found on his body? The detectives were left pondering with these questions. Why the wrinkling on only the soles of the feet? One possible explanation. Perhaps the person who killed the boy knew that his footprints were on file in some hospital and tried to blur the skin ridges to prevent the prints from being traced. But then, why is the right hand also wrinkled? Detectives speculate, without real evidence to support their theory, that the right hand might have been submerged in water to mislead investigators by providing false clue. However, this speculation falls apart on one point. If the goal was to conceal the footprints, why weren't the feet kept in water long enough to achieve that? When detectives checked the sole prints in hospital files, they found that the prints in many cases were too blurry to use for comparison. This didn't surprise them because, as most experienced investigators know, footprints are not always reliable for identification. The unusual haircut also caught their attention. It wasn't a typical style. It was a cut very high on the sides, almost like someone used a ball as a guy. Then on top, it was flattened down, resembling a half-inch crew cut. But what really intrigued them was that hair on his chest. It appeared to have been clipped while the boy was naked and lifeless. Captain Roberts and his team began to wonder if this indicated something more sinister. Perhaps the boy's mother was mentally unstable. They speculated if she had raised him as a girl, and after his tragic death, hastily cut his hair short to conceal any feminine features. The haircut looked sloppy, like it was done in a rush or out of panic. And those strands on his chest, they hinted at a hurried job, like the barber didn't even bother to clean up properly. It was all so eerie, painting a picture of a dark and tangled mystery. Another uncertain thought crept in. Was the boy mentally challenged? Some speculated that he might have been a child with special needs. Dr. Krotman remembered a chilling phone call he received after his involvement was made public. A woman with an eerily steady voice asked if he could determine if the boy was weak-minded. When he inquired about her identity, her tone shifted drastically. She began ranting about the struggles of caring for someone with intellectual disabilities. Her voice escalated in frustration. She even hinted at the horrifying idea that someone might snap under the pressure and harm such a child. Then, as suddenly as she called, she hung up, leaving behind a chilling silence. It was a disturbing glimpse into the darker corners of the human mind, adding yet another layer of mystery to the already perplexing case. As the investigation continued, the theory of the boy being mentally challenged lingered, neither proven or disproven. Yet, regardless of this mental state, one would assume that someone in the neighborhood would recognize him. Young officers were tasked with blending in at playgrounds, parks, and recreation centers, dressed casually as instructors to inquire about any missing children. Some children did remember a thin youngster who was no longer seen around, prompting thorough investigations, but each lead only led to children who were alive and well. The detectives then turned to the possibility of the boy's family being newcomers or recent movers to Philadelphia. They meticulously examined lists from moving companies, checked every white family who had recently moved, but all 763 investigations yielded no leads. Meanwhile, the body remained in the city morgue, and occasionally calls came in from people who thought they'd recognized the boy from newspaper photos. Each hopeful lead led them to the morgue, only to result in disappointment. However, a woman from Camden, New Jersey, initially believed she recognized the boy as one who had been traveling with a roofer she had hired. Several others in her neighborhood also identified the boy. Excitedly, detectives located the roofer, Charles D. Spees, from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, who had left town with his 8-year-old son. However, when Spees' estranged wife and others saw the body, they all denied it was him. And in Newark, New Jersey, Spees heard about the commotion and came to Philadelphia, bringing his son with him. Despite the ongoing calls floating into the City Hall headquarters of the Homicide Squad, the initial identification in Camden marked the last time anyone definitely recognized the boy. With each promising lead ending in disappointment, the police felt they would right back to where they started. However, the Philadelphia police, like their counterparts elsewhere, are known for their persistence. Even though more than a year had passed since the discovery of the body, the investigation pressed on. Both Chief Inspector Kelly and Captain Roberts remained hopeful, believing that buried within the vast expanse of their files might be a single sentence that could provide a breakthrough. All they needed was a starting point in this perplexing case. Meanwhile, a young civilian working as a fingerprint clerk in the police department devoted his own time to visiting hospitals in rural areas, meticulously checking footprints for any matches. While he tirelessly traversed from one hospital to another, detectives continuously combed through their existing files. Every lead, no matter how small, was diligently pursued, even those that trickled in from police departments in other states. Yet, the primary clues remain unchanged: a box, a blanket, and the body of a small child. On July 24, 1957, a solemn atmosphere surrounded the burial of the unidentified boy as city detectives paid their respects. Standing in solemn attention, the boy was laid to rest in a small white casket at the city cemetery. The tombstone had a simple inscription: February 25, 1957. Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy. After resting in his original grave for 41 years, the boy's body was dug up in November 1998. Investigators exhumed him to conduct DNA testing on a tooth, although it is uncertain if the testing provided any useful information. Following the DNA examination, the boy was laid to rest again, this time in Ivy Hill Cemetery in Mount Airy. The expenses for the second burial were covered by the Vidocq Society, an organization of professional investigators focused on solving cold cases. Craig Mann of Mann Funeral Home, whose father had overseen the boy's initial burial, managed the burial and generously provided a casket. Ivy Hill Cemetery kindly donated the gravesite. Around 100 people gathered for the gravesite service on November 11, 1998. The boy was honored with a new grave marker bearing the inscription, America's Unknown Child. Today, we are re-entering him and calling him America's Unknown Child as a symbol of our nation's abused children, missing children, and murdered children, remarked William Fleischer, the head of the Vidocq Society. We are validating this little boy's life. Our mission is to go forward from this day and put a name on that tombstone. In 2002, a woman who only identified herself as Martha came to the investigators stating that the boy used to live with her family. She said her mom purchased the boy and was ultimately bitten to death and abandoned his body in a box outside of town. Her claims were dismissed after neighbors confirmed that the boy was not living there, as well as Martha having a history of mental illness. Despite efforts over the passing decades, the mystery of the boy in the box persisted, with his identity remaining elusive. However, in December 2022, a significant breakthrough occurred in Philadelphia. On December 8, 2022, Commissioner Danielle Outlaw of the Philadelphia Police Department announced a groundbreaking development in the case. She revealed that the boy found deceased in 1957 finally had a name: Joseph Augustus Zarelli. This child's story was always remembered by the community, Outlaw expressed. His story was never forgotten. During a press conference, Outlaw and her team detailed how Zarelli's identity was unveiled through genetic genealogy. By uploading his DNA to genetic databases, detectives were led to relatives on his mother's side. Additionally, after delving into birth records, they successfully identified his father. They also discovered that Zarelli had 3 other siblings. Further investigations revealed that Joseph Augustus Zarelli was born on January 13, 1953, meaning he was merely 4 years old when his body was discovered. Despite this crucial discovery, the detectives remain guarded with information. They acknowledge that many questions still surround Zarelli's life and death. For now, the police have chosen not to disclose the names of Zarelli's parents out of consideration for his surviving siblings. Additionally, they decline to speculate on who might have been responsible for Zarelli's death, though they admitted we have our suspicions. After 65 long years, the boy in the box finally has a name: Joseph Augustus Zarelli. This big discovery, thanks to genetic genealogy and hard detective work, closes a chapter in a case that's puzzled folks in Philadelphia for a long time. But even with his name, a lot of questions are still there. We still don't know who hurt Joseph or why they did it. This moment reminds us that the search for truth and justice never really ends. Joseph's story was once a mystery, now has a name, but still a reminder of the many unsolved cases out there. It's a sign of hope for those still seeking answer, and after so many years. Thank you for listening to another episode of Murder and Me. I appreciate your support and interest in exploring these intriguing cases with me. Follow me on Instagram at Murder and Me. You can also subscribe on YouTube and subscribe and follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also listen to this podcast anywhere that you listen to your podcast. We're everywhere. I appreciate your support, and I will see you next week with another case.